My wife sold my classic car for her designer bags, saying it was just taking up space. I said okay. Then I used her inheritance money to buy it back and put it in my mother's name. The next day, her family was demanding I give it back. I, 38 male, am a systems analyst. My world is built on logic, on cause and effect. When a system breaks, I don't get emotional. I analyze the failure points. I stay calm. I find a solution. I think that's the only reason I'm able to write this right now. My wife, Kenzie, 35, and I have been married for 10 years. It's been a stable, predictable life. We have our separate interests, but we've always functioned as a unit, or so I believed. My one true passion, the one thing that is wholly mine, is my car. It's a 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1, finished in raven black. It wasn't just bought, it was built. My dad and I restored it in the garage of my childhood home. He passed away 6 years ago, and that car is the most tangible piece of him I have left. Every cent of leather and gasoline is a memory. It's a premarital asset, fully owned by me long before I ever met Kenzie. Its value isn't in dollars, though it's worth a significant amount. Its value is in my history. Kenzie has always called it that old gas guzzler. To her, its sole purpose was to occupy her preferred parking spot in the garage. She'd joke about it, but underneath there was always a current of genuine annoyance. I never took it seriously. That was my mistake. About a month ago, Kenzie's grandmother passed away, leaving her a sizable inheritance. The estate sent a check for $150,000. I remember the day it arrived. She was ecstatic. I suggested she open a separate personal account for it, to keep it as her own separate property. "Oh, that's too much work," she'd said, waving her hand dismissively. "I'll just put it in our joint checking for now and move it later. It's easier." And she did. She mobile deposited a $150,000 check into the account we both use for bills and direct deposits. The number sat there on the balance screen, an anomaly amongst the mortgage payments and grocery bills. I felt a knot in my stomach even then. It felt reckless. Yesterday, that recklessness came home to roost. I got home from work, and the moment I turned into the driveway, I knew. The garage door was open. The space where the Mustang lived was a sterile patch of concrete. It was like a missing tooth in a smile you've known your whole life. I walked into the house, my heart beating a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. Kenzie was in the living room, humming. Arranged on the sofa were several new designer handbags, a big leather tote, a fancy clutch, another one with a recognizable pattern. They looked expensive and utterly alien in our home. I didn't say anything. I just stood in the doorway. She turned, her smile bright and wide. "Hi, honey, look what I got." I decided it was time to invest in some quality pieces. My voice was flat, devoid of any inflection. "Kenzie, where is the Mustang?" Her smile didn't vanish, but it tightened. "Oh, that? Don't get worked up. I sold it." I waited for the punchline. It never came. "It was just taking up space," she said, her tone defensive. "It was ancient. You barely drove it, and this man from a classic car dealership offered an amazing price right on the spot. It was just sitting there, losing value. Now we have a huge chunk of cash, and I have these beautiful things that I'll actually use." She genuinely believed this was a reasonable, logical exchange. She had unilaterally decided to liquidate my most prized possession, a piece of my soul, for accessories. She saw my father's legacy as seed money. I looked at her, at the triumphant, expectant look on her face, and the system failure became clear. This wasn't a bug. This was a feature of her programming I had failed to see. The calm I'm known for descended. It wasn't an act. It was a defense mechanism. Panic is useless. Emotion is a distraction. I needed to analyze, and I needed a solution. "How much did you sell it for?" I asked. $50,000, she announced, proud of the number. I know for a fact, based on recent auction results for similar models, it's worth closer to $85,000, maybe more. She didn't get a good price. She got a fast price. I just nodded. "Okay." The single word confused her more than a day of screaming would have. "Okay? Seriously? I thought you'd be furious." "I'm tired," I said. "I'm going to go have a shower." I walked out of the room, leaving her with her collection. But I wasn't going to shower. I was going to my office to start working on a solution. The money was in our joint account. She had commingled her inheritance, making it legally accessible to me. And the man who runs the most reputable classic Ford dealership in the region is named Milo. I have his number in my phone. She didn't sell it to a random guy. She sold it to the one person I knew would pick up my call. TLDR. My wife sold my deceased father's classic Mustang to buy designer bags. She deposited her huge inheritance into our joint account first. I acted calm, but I'm about to use those commingled funds to get my car back. Update 1. Thank you for the comments and messages. Reading them, especially the ones urging caution, was grounding. It forced me to slow down and ensure every step was methodical. My first instinct was to immediately drain the account and get the car. But as a systems guy, I know that acting without a clear protocol leads to catastrophic failure. Step 1. Legal consultation. The morning after Kenzie's announcement, I took a personal day. I didn't confront her. I went to see a divorce lawyer, a man named Julian, who was highly recommended by a colleague. I laid out the entire situation in his office. The premarital status of the car, the documented value, the sale without my consent, and the crucial fact that her $150 inheritance was sitting in our joint checking account. Julian listened, nodding slowly. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. What your wife did is called dissipation of assets, he explained. She took a valuable, separate asset of yours and converted it to cash for her own benefit. That's a serious issue in a divorce settlement. The fact that she deposited her inheritance into a joint account is a massive, unforced error on her part. Those funds are now commingled. Legally, you have as much right to access that money as she does. He mapped out a strategy. It was aggressive but legally sound. You can use the joint funds to recover your property, he said. It's a bold move. It will detonate the marriage, but it's defensible. You're not stealing. You're using shared capital to rectify a financial injury she inflicted upon you by selling your separate property. But, he warned, be prepared. This will get ugly. Step 2. The recovery. Armed with a clear legal footing, I acted. I called Milo. He was shocked and deeply apologetic. Grant, she told me you were both on board, that you were downsizing for a move and were too emotional to handle the sale yourself. I feel like a fool. He confirmed the price, $50,000. I told him I wanted it back and that I'd pay him $55,000 for his trouble and to cover his paperwork. He tried to refuse the extra, but I insisted. He was an innocent party caught in the crossfire. He agreed immediately. Step 3. The transaction and the shield. From my laptop at a coffee shop, I logged into our joint bank account. I initiated a wire transfer for $55,000 to Milo. Then I met him and my mother at a notary office. As Julian had advised, this was a calculated risk. We transferred the title directly into my mother's name. Julian's logic was that we could argue this wasn't hiding a marital asset but protecting my now recovered separate property from a spouse who had already proven she was willing to steal and sell it. It's now legally my mother's car, parked securely in her garage. I have the keys. The confrontation came that night. Kenzie was giddy, showing me a travel website. I was thinking with the car money we could go to. I need to talk to you, I said, cutting her off. I led her to the home office and sat her down. I calmly told her what I had done. I contacted Milo. I used the money in the joint account to buy the Mustang back. It's at my mother's house now, titled in her name. The color drained from her face. You did what? From the joint account? That was my inheritance. You can't just take $55,000. You're right, it was your inheritance, I said, my voice steady. But you put it in our joint account, commingling the funds, and you sold my car, my separate property. You took an asset worth over $80,000 from me. I used our shared funds to recover it. According to my lawyer, I've simply made myself partially whole. The rest will be settled later. The mention of a lawyer sent a tremor through her. Lawyer? What are you talking about? This marriage is over, Kenzie. Her shock morphed into pure, undiluted rage. Not sadness, not remorse, just fury that her payday had been snatched away. You'll pay for this, Grant. You stole from me? My family will hear about this. She stormed out of the room, phone to her ear. I could hear her screaming to her father on the other end. I just sat there, the quiet of the office feeling like the eye of a hurricane. Julian was right. It's going to get ugly. Update 2. The storm has made landfall. Kenzie's family, her father Dennis, mother Sharon, and older brother Ryder, drove down 2 days after my last post. They didn't come to mediate. They came as enforcers, walking into the house with Kenzie's key as if they owned the place. Dennis, a man whose presence fills a room with bluster and cheap cologne, started immediately. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, son, but it's over. You stole my daughter's money." "Hello, Dennis," I said calmly from the kitchen island. "Kenzie sold my property. I used our shared funds to recover it. It's that simple." Sharon, a woman who wields disappointment like a weapon, put her hand on my arm. "Grant, dear, we know you're hurt, but families make mistakes. Kenzie made a mistake. A husband is supposed to be forgiving. You need to call your mother and have her sign that car over to Kenzie, and then you need to put the money back. It's the only way to fix this." The sheer, breathtaking entitlement of that statement, that I should give her the car and the money, leaving me with nothing but the betrayal, was almost impressive. Then Ryder, who was 30 going on 16, stepped up. He got into my personal space, trying to use his size to intimidate me. "Listen up. You're going to make this right now, or I'll make you." This is where my lawyer's advice paid off. Before they arrived, I'd looked up the law. My state is a one-party consent state. As long as I am a part of the conversation, I am legally allowed to record it. My phone was in my shirt pocket, recording audio. I just looked at Ryder and said, "Ryder, you are making threats in my home. You need to step back, or I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing." He laughed. "You don't have the guts." I didn't argue. I just pulled my phone out, unlocked it, and my thumb hovered over the 911 shortcut. His bravado evaporated. He backed down, muttering under his breath. The next 48 hours were a siege of emotional manipulation. They accused me of financial abuse, of being controlling, of being jealous of Kenzie's newfound wealth. Kenzie sat by, weeping on cue, the perfect victim. My mother called me. Dennis had phoned her and tried to bully her, threatening her with legal action for harboring stolen property. My mom, a retired schoolteacher, listened patiently before saying, "Sir, my name is on the title and the conversation is over," and hung up. The family left this morning, but not before Kenzie delivered a final, desperate volley. They had a new strategy. She cornered me, her voice low and conspiratorial. "Okay, Grant, you want the car? Fine, keep it, but you need to give me the $55,000 back. That's only fair. My inheritance for your car." It was a classic negotiation tactic. Ignore the fact that the car was worth far more than the cash she got, ignore the theft itself, and frame it as a simple exchange. She was trying to buy my forgiveness and my car for a discount, using her own inheritance. "That's not how this works, Kenzie," I said. "We're past that." Yesterday I received an email. It was from a Mr. Sterling, a partner at a prestigious law firm. It was not a blustering letter of threats. It was a sharp, professional notice of representation. It stated that I had, in no uncertain terms, misappropriated $55,000 of Kenzie's separate property that was temporarily housed in a joint account, and they would be pursuing its full recovery, along with all legal fees. Reading it, I felt the first real spike of fear. This wasn't her bully father yelling anymore. This was a real fight. TLDR, my wife's family tried to intimidate me, but I stood my ground and have it all on tape. Now she's hired a serious lawyer who is coming after me for the money I used to buy the car back. The real battle is just beginning. Final update. It's over. The last 3 months have felt like a slow-motion legal car crash, but I've walked away from the wreckage. It wasn't the clean, swift victory you see in movies. It was a grinding, expensive, and stressful war of attrition. Kenzie's lawyer, Mr. Sterling, was no fool. His opening salvo was an aggressive motion filed with the court, demanding an immediate freeze on our assets and the return of the $55,000. He argued that Kenzie's inheritance was clearly intended as separate property, and my immediate withdrawal of a large sum constituted financial misconduct. He was good. For a week, I was genuinely terrified he might win. My lawyer, Julian, didn't flinch. He filed our countermotion. It was a detailed, evidence-backed narrative of what had actually happened. The asset. We provided the Mustang's original title in my father's name, the transfer to me, and 3 independent valuations showing its worth between $80,000 and $90,000. This established it as my separate, premarital property of significant value. The dissipation. We included a sworn affidavit from Milo, the dealer, detailing how Kenzie had misrepresented the sale. We attached a copy of the bill of sale she signed for $50,000. Julian argued this was a textbook case of dissipation of assets, and a fraudulent one at that. The recoupment. We showed the deposit of the $150,000 inheritance check into the joint account, making the funds legally commingled. Our argument was that my withdrawal wasn't misconduct, it was a justifiable, if aggressive, act of recoupment, to mitigate the financial damage she had caused by converting my asset to cash. The battle then moved to the discovery phase. Lawyers, depositions, mediation. It was brutal. The recording of her family's threats was deemed admissible and became a key piece of evidence showing their pattern of intimidation. The turning point came during mediation. We were all in a sterile conference room, me and Julian, Kenzie and Sterling, and a neutral mediator. Kenzie, under Sterling's coaching, was trying to play the part of the wronged wife. Sterling argued, Mr. Pat Warner took it upon himself to drain the joint account of funds he knew were from Miss Prescott's inheritance. Julian countered calmly. Miss Prescott took it upon herself to sell Mr. Warner's irreplaceable, premarital property for roughly 60% of its value. My client simply used available, commingled funds to recover his stolen property. In fact, he is still at a loss of approximately $30,000. Not to mention the $5,000 premium he had to pay to recover the car. Then Julian played his final card. Furthermore, he said, sliding a folder across the table, we have itemized the purchases Miss Prescott made with the initial funds from the sale. A collection of designer handbags valued at $18,450. We contend these bags were purchased with money derived from a fraudulent transaction and should be considered part of the marital estate to be credited against her share. That's when Kenzie broke. The pressure of the legal jargon, the sight of her shopping spree being itemized like a criminal's ledger, it was too much. This is insane, she shouted. It was just a stupid car. The mediator looked at her, then at her lawyer. That one outburst revealed everything. It wasn't a mistake. She still believed she had done nothing fundamentally wrong. Sterling knew he was losing. The commingled funds were his weakest point, and Kenzie's clear intent to deprive me of my property was her biggest vulnerability. The negotiation got serious. Sterling wanted to protect the remainder of Kenzie's inheritance. Julian wanted to ensure I was made whole. We settled that day. The agreement was complex, but the outcome was clear. The $55,000 withdrawal from the joint account was officially characterized in the settlement as reimbursement for the value of a separate asset. It was a wash. She didn't have to pay it back, but I didn't have to count it as my asset. The Mustang is acknowledged as my mother's property, free of any and all claims. To avoid a fight over the handbags, Kenzie had to concede on the house. I received 60% of the home's equity instead of 50% to compensate for the remaining value of the car and legal fees. She walked away with the rest of her inheritance intact, but her net worth took a massive hit from the loss of the house equity and her substantial legal bills. I saw her one last time when we signed the final papers. She wouldn't look at me. The entitlement was gone, replaced by a hollow bitterness. Her family, who had bankrolled her fight, had cost her a fortune in a losing battle. I'm in a smaller apartment now. It's quiet. Last weekend I went to my mom's house. I pulled the cover off the Mustang. The light gleamed on the black paint. I got in, turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life. It's a sound my dad loved. For months I'd felt nothing but cold, calculated anger. But sitting in that car, in the quiet of the garage, I finally felt something else. A sense of peace. It wasn't a win. A win would have been never having to go through this. It was a recovery. I had recovered a piece of my past, and in the process I had secured my future.